Today's daf is daf Samach Gimel, and we're on the bottom of Samach Beis. On Beis, 4 lines up from the bottom, Rabbi Akiva, and this is one of the most famous Agadatas in Shas, Raya de Ben Kalba Savuahava. He was the shepherd for the tzon of one of the richest men in the Jewish community, whose name was Ben Kalba. Chazise Brate, and the daughter of Ben Kalba was observing Rabbi Akiva Davitznia Uma'ale. He was very tzanua, he was a Baal Midas Tovos, and his hanhagos were Bitznius. And Rabbi Akiva, the Gemara tells us in Brachot Samach Beis, was muflag. He was outstanding in the midah of tznius. And in Bein Adam Lechavero, he was Noach Lebrios, but he was missing Limud Torah in his life. Amra Le, the daughter of Ben Kalba Savua, said to Rabbi Akiva, Ima Kadshonalach, if we will get married, Azalt Lebeirav, would you be willing to go to the Beis Medrash and study Torah? Amra Allah, Rabbi Akiva responded, I would be willing to commit myself to Torah study. Kachale Bitzina, they didn't make it public. They suspected that the father-in-law, Ben Kalba Savua, would not be happy with this marriage. The Shadarte, they got married sort of privately in a private small ceremony, and she sent him to study Torah. Shama Avua, and yet somehow the word came to Kalba Savua that his wife was married off to Akiva, Rabbi Akiva, Afakte Migbesa. He threw her out of his house. Adra Hadna Minichse. And he imposed the neder that she should not have any benefit whatsoever from any of his possessions. Azil, Rabbi Akiva, on the other hand, Yosef, he went and he sat Treis Shnin Bebeirav. He sat learning Torah 12 years in the Beis Medrash. Also, when he came back, Isi Ba'adei, he was accompanied by Treis Alfi Talmidim, by 12,000 students. Shameh, Rabbi Akiva stands outside his house after 12 years, and he overhears Lahu Saba, to one elderly gentleman, the Ka'amar Lo Ishto, he was saying to his wife, Ad Kama. And here we start our daf for today, daf Samach Gimel Kamid Davrit. Kalmona Mechayim. How long will you live the life of a widow whose husband is alive and he has left you, has forsaken you? Amra Le, and the daughter of Kalba Savua, the wife of Rabbi Akiva, said to that elderly gentleman, Ili Diditzes, if you would listen to me, Yosef Treis Shani Achrin, he would go back to the yeshiva and add another 12 years of learning. But Rabbi Akiva overheard this, Amar B'shus Kavidna, I have the license, the green light from my wife, and I'm not even going to enter into my house. I'm going to go back to study Talmud in the Beis Medrash, Hadar Azil, the Yosef Treis Shari Achrini. He studies 12 additional years, all told 24 years, the Beirav in the Beis Medrash. And Kiyosef, now when he comes back after another 12 years, Isi Badei, he brings with him, he's accompanied by Esrim, the Arba, Alfi Talmidim, 24,000 students. And here Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, or Shiva Mir, is very famous for asking the question, why didn't Rabbi Akiva come in for a cup of coffee? It sounds like he overheard from the outside and he went back for another 12 years. And that's where Reb Chaim is Machadish, this famous Yisod, that 24 consecutive years is fundamentally and qualitatively different than 2 periods of 12 years each. Shama de Besu, his wife heard that he was coming, Haviko Nafko Lape, and she went to greet him. And because she was so poor, she didn't have the right garments to wear. Mechubedika levush beged yofa. Amrula shivivasa, her shchenim, her neighbor said to she, leave mana levush viskase, at least borrow nice clothing from some woman in order to receive your husband. Mekabel pana. Amrula hu. And the wife of Rabbi Akiva responded to her neighbors, I don't need to dress up fancy in honor of my husband. Yodea tzadik nefesh behemto. And the pasuk says that, I don't see where they tell you here. Oh, here it is, Mishlei. Okay, fine. I knew it was Mishlei. Yeah. In other words, he knows how much suffering I experienced for him in order that he sacrificed that he should study. I don't have to put on airs. When she came closer to Rabbi Akiva, nafal apa, she fell on her face. She was hugging his, kissing his feet. The Shameh, the Shamish, the second in command, we call the Heisbach, he was pushing her away to be marchika from Rabbi Akiva. She was being matriach Rabbi Akiva in such an action. Amar lahu, Rabbi Akiva said to his second in command, Shavkua, leave her alone. And this is one of the most famous lines in Shas, famous phrase, 4 words, Shaliva shalachem shalahi. Everything that we have learned, that we have studied, and I have studied, it's all hers. It's only because she sent me to study Torah that I went to study. And now my Talmidim in Hazchus, you have studied from me, you have learned from me. Shama avua di asa gavarabala masa. And Ben Kalba Savua heard the shmua that a great man had come to the city, and Kalba Savua had no idea that this was his shepherd. Amar, he said to himself, Ezil legabe, I'm going to go and be Mekabel Panov, and Efsher the Mefer Nidroy. And perhaps he could be matir my neder, that I prohibited my daughter in getting any hana from me. And this is called charata. To be matir neder with charata. When a person took a neder, he didn't calculate exactly what would be the repercussions down the line. Also legabe, so Kalba Savur comes to Rabbi Akiva, and he tells him the whole story of the neder that he imposed upon his daughter, that she shouldn't have any benefit from him. And now he wants Rabbi Akiva, not knowing that he's Rabbi Akiva, to be matir his neder. Omolei, Rabbi Akiva responded, when you took this neder prohibiting your daughter from getting any benefit from your possessions, did you realize that that shepherd will become such an Adam Gadol? Omolei, Kalba Savur responded, Afilu perik echad. Even, just 1 second, Rabbi. I will be back here at approximately 2 o'clock. I have a Zoom share in Canada 3:15, and then I leave this evening at around 6:30.
Oh, I see.
So Kalva Savur says that if I would have known that he would study even one chapter, even one halach, I wouldn't have been madir hana for my wife. Omo le, Rabbi Akiva says, Anahu, I am your shepherd that married your daughter. Nafal al ape, Kalva Savur fell on his face. Menashke al kari, he too, like his daughter previously, hugged him, his legs, his knees, kissed him. V'yov le palga, and he gave him half of the mammon that he had. Brate de Rabbi Akiva, the daughter of Rabbi Akiva, of the Leilu ben Azei Haki, she too sent her husband Ben Azai, just as her mother had done, and married Ben Azai on the condition that he would go study Torah for 24 years in the Beis Medrash. V'hainu b'yamri inchi, and this is the common phrase in the mouth of people, Rechela basar Rechela azla. Kivsa olechas achar kivsa. In other words, the young imitate, in this case, their mother, ke'ovdei ima kach ovdei brat. Like the actions of the mother, so the actions of the daughter. Rabbi Yosef, Bray the Rava, Rabbi Yosef, the son of Rava, Shadre Avue Lebei Rav Lekameh to Rabbi Yosef. He sent his father to the Beis Medrash to study Torah at the feet of Rabbi Yosef. Paskule Shis Shani, they designated a time period of 6 consecutive years that he would be in the Beis Medrash. Ki havetla Shani, but after 3 years, Mata Male Yom Kippur, he comes on Erev Yom Kippur. And Rav Yosef was a little concerned about that. I'm going to see if I can figure out why he's coming home. After all, there was meant to be 6 years of Torah study. Shama Avui, his father Rava, heard that Rav Yosef came back. Shakal Mana, he took Claim El Chamen. This should be taken figuratively. He sharpened his, his weapons, as if he's going to go fight with his son that he came back 3 years earlier than the time that was designated for his study. Benafak Liapi goes out to greet his son. Amalei, Rabbi says to his son Rav Yosef, so Nascha Nizkarta, did you remember your woman of ill repute? And all this is a mashal for the fact that he wants to come back to be with his wife, and he gives up Torah study. Ikediamri, another version has it, Amalei, Rabbi said to his son Rav Yosef, Yo Nascha Nizkarta, did you remember your dove? And here the Maharsha adds that the choice of a dove is not coincidental because the dove is very loyal to its bat zug. Itrud. Rava and his son, Rav Yosef, got into a kind of a verbal battle, and they got so preoccupied. It was Erev Yom Kippur. Lo mar ifsik v'lo mar ifsik. Neither of them made a suda mafsek. And this leads us to the Mishnah here on Daf Samach Gimel. Hamoredes al Baila. The Gemara later on is going to discuss exactly how her rebellion manifested itself. And in this case, he doesn't want to give her a divorce and pay up her ksuva. The Rabbanan established a takana that would pressure her to retract her revolution, so to speak, her merida, and fall into line. And what did they establish? Pochasin lamik subasa. On a weekly basis, they would lower and reduce her ksuba, shiva dinrim. Each week, they would minus 7 dinrim from her ksuba, so that when he would divorce her or die, she'll be mafsid, she'll lose all of that money that accumulates over the course of time until she straightens herself out. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Shivata Terafikin, that they reduce her ksuba on a weekly basis, not by 7 dinrim, by 7 trafficking. The Gemara is going to discuss exactly how much are trafficking. Ad Mosai Poches, how long of a period of time and how much of her ksuba will be reduced. And the Mishnah quotes a machlokas between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yossi. The Tanakama holds ad keneged ksubasa. We go down, down, down until the entire ksuba was consumed. There's nothing left. He gives her a get, divorces her without a ksuba. Rabbi Yossi Omer, even more than that. We olamu pokos v'holech. He can continue to subtract from her funds. Let's say her father dies and she inherits her father's money. Gove menu. In other words, he could be poches v'holech, even other nechasim, even other possessions that she owns beyond the ksuba. Now, what happens in the reverse case? V'chein, so too, hamored al ishto, if he doesn't fulfill his obligations within the context of marriage, the Rabbanan made a takana that in order to force him and pressure him to straighten himself out, mosifim al ksubasa, he's going to have to add to the mana masayim of the basic ksuba shlosha dinrim b'Shabbos 3 dinrim. And the Gemara is going to pick up this question on Samach Dalet over Beis, why a moredes gets a penalty, a punishment, which is just about twice 200% of the punishment and the penalty imposed on a Baal who is mored. And Rabbi Yehuda Omer shlosha tafikin. On a weekly basis, it's going to be shlosha. So it's always going to be the same machlokas Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda with a ratio of 7-3. The Gemara says, moredes mimai. What is the nature of ha-merida? And here we have machlokas, which we're going to present in the Havamin of the Gemara as an extreme machlokas. Each opinion rejects the other opinion. Rav Huda Omer, mitashmish amita, she refuses to have an intimacy with her husband. And Rav Yossi, Rav Chanina Omar, mimalacha, she refuses to do the malachos that we discussed in the previous Mishnah, that a woman is obligated to do in the course of marriage. And here we have machlokes, whether or not she was a moredes from all the malachos, or even if she dropped some of those malachos and refuses to perform those malachos. The Gemara now is going to prove that merida is mitashvish hamita, and therefore we're going to have to reformulate this machlokes, and even Rav Yossi, Rav Chanina is going to have to agree that tashvish hamita is a merida that sets into motion the entire process of the punitive measures that are meant to bring her back to the straight path. And the Mishnah says, "V'cheina mored al ishto." A man is subject to a penalty if he is mored, and as a result, they add and jack up the ksuba. Gemara says the following: we're going to find a parallel between moredes and mored. If we assume that moredes is mitashmish, l'chai, then it's good. And just like her merida is mitashmish hamita, his merida is mitashmish hamita. He refuses to have an intimacy with his wife. El l'man diyorabat, according to Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Chanina, that what is moredes is mimalacha, and she's mishubedes to him in the context of marriage, and she has to do these malachos, and now she's revolting against the husband, refusing to do the malachos. Where's the parallel on the other side of this equation? Does he, the husband, have any responsibility in the context of marriage vis-a-vis his wife to do malacha? Where's the equation here in this Mishnah between mored and moredes? And the Gemara rejects and says, there is a situation in which the Baal is meshubah to his wife, and that is with regard to mizonos. And mizonos on the side of the chovos habal parallels and corresponds to malacha on the side of the Isha. Her responsibility is to do these malachas. His responsibility is to support her. The Omer, and he declares, Eini zon v'eini mefarnes. I'm not willing to support her, and she does not have to do malacha for me. And now, what's the difference between Eini mezan and Eini mefarnes? That sounds like a repetition of the same phrase. Let me just look and see. I looked before, I didn't see anything. Maybe you have something in your commentary. Actually, even in the Lashon HaKsuba, we say, Ano aflach v'ezon v'amafarnes. So apparently there's some difference between mezonos and par. You know what I think? Maybe, Rabbi, parnasa, as opposed to mezonos, is something that's not katsu. It's not set. It's an additional allowance for other needs that she might have. So mezonos is the set minimum that she needs on a weekly basis of begadim, of a roof over her head, of food to eat, and then beyond that, it's called parnasa. What do you have in your commentary? Nothing? I think that's the pshat. In any event, he deserves a knas when he says, Eini zon v'eini mefarnes. He's obligated to support her. And just like she on her side has a few malacha, he on his side has a few parnasa. So Gemara asks the following question: There's no such thing as a waiting period in which we extend the marriage and impose these punitive measures, these penalties, in order to hope that we can salvage the marriage. But rather, when a man declares, I don't want to be mefarnes my wife, then he immediately, without any delay, is obligated to give her a divorce. And why are you telling me now that, no, we're going to extend the marriage, delay, we're going to dilly-dally and procrastinate and hope that he will respond to the punitive measures? And the Gemara answers, V'lav lamluchi beiboy. Even when Rav had in mind that Yotzi v'yitei ksuba, don't we have to ask him, why are you declaring Eini zon v'eini mefarnes? We have to try to convince him to rescind his statement and to be willing to support his wife. And during that period of time, when we're running after him and we're trying to influence him and we're trying to get him to change his mind and support his wife, during that time, we're going to threaten him with this penalty. We're going to impose this penalty as a threat to get him to straighten out and support his wife. We're going to add to the ksuba. If at the end of the day, he will not give in, he refuses, and he's not flexible about it, then Yotzi v'yitei ksuba, and he has to pay a higher level of ksuba above Mana Masayim. Meisvei, the Gemara brings another proof with regard to this machlokes from a brisa. If a woman is moredes al baila, and we said we reduce her ksuba, achas li arusa unisua. It doesn't matter whether she's an arusa and she refuses to get married, or an asua and she refuses to have tashmish amnita. Vafilu nida, and the Gemara is going to explain why would a nida be considered moredes if she refuses to have tashmish amnita while she's a nida. Vafilu chola, the same question: why is she guilty if she's a chola? Vafilu shomeres yavam, and she refuses to be misyabed. Bishlein l'mandi omer malacha. If a moredes means that she refuses to do the malacha shapit, now I can understand that even though she's a nida and a nida is healthy and strong, she can do the malacha and she refuses to do so, she's a moredes. We'll see about a chola in a second. El l'mandi omer moredes means what? Mi tashmish, nida vas tashmishi. And here the Gemara, to answer this question, why would she be considered moredis if during nida she refuses to have an intimacy with the husband? The Gemara is going to introduce a principle, Omar Loch, Eina Doma Misha Yesh Lo Pas B'Sal, Misha Ein Lo Pas B'Sal. If a man hears from his wife that she doesn't want to have relations with him, now she's a nida. But a nida is someone who has pas b'sal. That's why the Gemara allows a man to be misyached, to be alone in a private room with his wife during a nidus, even though it's a nisa kares, because he has pas b'sal. He knows that in a week or 10 days, whenever it is, she'll go to mikvah and they'll be able to resume relations. So he's able to oishal. He can hold himself back. He's not as hungry as someone who doesn't have a pas, doesn't have a loaf of bread in his basket. So when she, who's a nida, she says, I don't want to have any more relations with you. I've had it with you. I don't want to have any intimacy with you. And therefore, he doesn't have pas b'salo. He doesn't know that in the future, down the line, after she is metayeres as atzma, that he can resume relations. He could be amri. Others say, let's bring the opposite raya from this brisa. I can understand chola, that she's considered a moredes because even if she's ill, she can still have intimacy with her husband. She's still considered re'uya litashmish.